So if you've spent any time on LinkedIn, and my sincerest condolences for that, you've probably noticed that there are waves of advocates for different technologies. And they tend to get extra frenetic whenever there's a big thing that's been dominating the media conversation. Right now, of course, that is AI, because you cannot turn around without 10 people shouting at you about how AI is going to change this industry, that industry, industries we haven't even imagined yet. But AI is going to change them, and we're all going to make money. So the interesting thing about the targeting of all this AI content is that it's aimed at bosses. However, in a public forum like LinkedIn, everybody's seeing it. So you, as a worker, are seeing messages that are really intended for your boss, the people with decision-making power, the people who can write checks, pull the triggers on big decisions. And what that has on ordinary people, ordinary workers, is this really demoralizing effect where you're essentially seeing your own demise being laid out in front of your eyes with the most cheerful and optimistic and really giddy tone, which if you're a boss, whatever, it's just another money-making opportunity. If you're a worker, it leaves you with this sense that there is really nothing that you can do to save your job, to save your income stream, to save your place in the world. So the reason that I compare AI to the CBD of tech is because I worked in the CBD industry for a while, and it was phenomenal, the range of products that you would see CBD getting added to. Everything from beauty creams to sports drinks to clothing. Like there was actually yoga leggings that you could embed CBD in, and it would somehow chill you out when you're doing your asanas. And you're seeing a similar phenomenon with AI right now, because there are applications for AI that, quite frankly, do not make any goddamn sense. But if you attach this AI label, the same way that they used to attach the CBD label, the price, the sky is really the limit in terms of how much you can mark up your product or service if you attach this magic buzzword to it. So I think it's really important to differentiate between what AI as a technology could potentially do for people versus how ordinary people could use AI in their daily lives. It's great that you can tell Midjourney to make me a picture of a pope in a funny coat. Hilarious, great way to spend 2 minutes of your day. What actual value does that bring to your life? Basically nothing. And what I think is very disingenuous is this idea that somehow being able to crank out more words, more pictures, more video, more whatever, is going to have any tangible benefit on the people who are already doing that. It's not like the world needs 30,000 new videos a day or 50,000 new songs. Like, the problem is not that we don't have enough cultural output at the moment. It's the problem that nobody sees what you're putting out. And flooding the zone with exponentially more content, that has no value for ordinary people. So there's a really interesting phenomenon among the AI guys who say that your continued viability in the workforce is going to depend on your ability to use these AI tools correctly. It's kind of the last straw for these AI guys to grasp at, because it's obvious to most people that a machine that produces words is going to replace a person who produces words. And so the idea for the AI guys is that, well, maybe you won't be the producer of the words, but you can be the director of the machine. Well, the entire point of the machine is to replace the people. If there are 10 copywriters at an agency, for example, ChatGPT gets introduced to write copy. The entire point of ChatGPT would be to have one person doing the work of 10 copywriters, and then you're saving the value of 9 salaries. So I think it's really magical thinking to imagine that by mastering the AI tools, you as a worker are going to preserve your livelihood, because the entire point of the tools is to replace you. Right now, we're at I would say, the middle of the beginning of the AI hype cycle. And this is a kind of a phenomenon that we see with crypto, that we saw with NFTs, that we saw with the blockchain. And so in the beginning, you have blue sky thinking. Anything's possible, no constraints on the power of the imagination, because nothing's had to prove itself in the real world yet. Where we are now is that companies have started to adopt generative AI a little bit. People have started to explore a little bit. And what we're seeing is that it's really good at some things. We're also seeing that it is really rote, that it is really derivative, and that the luster wears off pretty quickly, because you're just bombarded with so many examples of this. So the limitations are starting to become exposed. What we're going to see next, I think, is a backlash to the backlash, because as people say, wait a minute, all of these chat GPT generated emails sound the same, they're not very convincing. You can send the email blast for sure. Is anybody going to click purchase or click subscribe? That's a completely different question. So what we're going to see next, I think, from these AI guys is more of this, you're not using it correctly, because the limitations of the tools are what they are. And where this ends up, I don't really know. I think anybody who tells you that they know is probably trying to sell you something or having more nefarious purposes in mind. But what I do think is that there's a very hard cap on what these tools can do. And eventually we're going to reach that cap. We're going to realize that one chat GPT tool cannot really replace the work of 10 human copywriters. But at that point, I would very, very much doubt that companies who have invested so much both money and reputational capital in their pivot to AI are suddenly going to swing in the other direction and go, actually, you know what, human labor is way more valuable than we thought. Please come back, here's a raise and more vacation benefits or something. We saw this with the pivot to video in the media world, because after that trend swept through and entire editorial teams were getting laid off or restructured to make room for video, Facebook eventually turned off the spigot for traffic. It was relatively quickly obvious that all of these videos were not actually generating more income, but the industry never swung back. It just remained, the media industry, as kind of a shell of itself, with two people doing the work of 15 or 20 or more, and the quality degrades. So everything gets a little bit worse, and we're just left in the wreckage, which is why I think it's really important to stop this AI madness before it gets to that point, before we're left kind of picking through the rubble of our industries, our communities, like our lives, really. And we're at an inflection point right now. Like, we don't have a ton of time to put our foot down and just say absolutely not, because it's very clear that the only people benefiting from this technology are the people at the very top. One thing that's really important to keep in mind whenever you're in the middle of a storm like this, every day, every week, there's more stories about the uncertainty that feed the uncertainty that you as a worker feel. And that's intended to induce fear in you. It's intended to keep you quiet. It's intended to keep you docile. Because if you poke your head up a little bit, guess who's going to be the first one to get cut? Because if you individually stick your head up and say, wait a minute, why are we investing all this money in AI when I haven't gotten a raise in 2 years and my benefits are being cut? It is very likely that you as an individual squeaky wheel will just get tossed. It becomes a lot harder if it's you plus 10 of your coworkers. It gets really hard if it's you plus 100 of your coworkers. It gets almost impossible if it's you plus your industry. But there is strength in numbers. That is really our only strength at this point. So however you can manage to connect with other people, even if it's conversations in a coffee shop, we need to take this first step together of people talking to each other and realizing, hey, that this is nonsense. But it's also really easy to keep that quiet, keep that internal, because you don't want to rock the boat necessarily. And I'm not saying rock the boat in front of the boss, because that's probably not a good idea. Behind the boss's back, though, think about rocking that boat.